You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
All right, what's good, everybody? Happy New Year. It's 2024. A disaster has struck at the World Junior as well, presented by Betano. It's the first edition of Leafs Morning Take for 2024. Nick Alberga and Carter Hutton with you. What's going on, Huts?
Nothing. How you doing, buddy? Things are good.
I was better 10 minutes ago. Then I tuned into the World Junior game, and it's now gone final. Czechia stuns Canada in a medal round game, so they're not even going to be able to defend their title. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, I know a couple Leafs too. Disappointing. We better send them down, put them on waivers. What can we do with them? You know, disappointment here. It's tough. Poor kids, though. It's a lot of weight on their shoulders.
It's funny you say that because even reading social media throughout the World Junior, a lot of people just love ripping on Maple Leafs prospects, and the heat that Fraser Minton took, he was the captain of this team, was just ridiculous. Like, you know it better maybe because you played with some other teams around the league. Everybody just loves to hate the Maple Leafs, don't they?
Yeah, it is. It is one of those things, right? It's just like the fan base and stuff. And I remember even when when they didn't have a great team, I remember going in there and they struggled and it was still just so much BS all the time, right? I think it's just the pressure that comes with it. And you see sometimes how it scares guys out of the market, right? It's one of those things where these young kids are getting a full taste of it right away, right? Like the difference between getting drafted to, you know, you get drafted to Florida or some other off market where you're not the pressure. And then all of a sudden you're drafted to the Leaf. Nothing changes. It's still the same hockey game. You're in the same development, but you're in the Leafs, you're in it, and you got to learn to deal with it.
It's a different market for sure. I'm curious to see how the response is from the likes of Minton and Cowan now when they go back to junior. Like Easton Cowan, from all accounts, watching a bit of the game today was really, really good. It was an up and down tourney for Fraser Minton, but yeah, like it pretty much is disaster. Like they might throw a summit at Hockey Canada over, you know, not even making the medal round pretty much. I mean, you lose in the quarters, you're not even a chance to play for a medal. Like it's pretty surprising stuff, but I think if there's a nation to get a mulligan, it's probably Canada. They had won back-to-back entering this tourney, but it was weird. Like I'm so into the World Junior this year. It's like I felt like I had no time to catch up. Maybe it's because it's overseas this year.
Yeah, I think the only day I was really the first day, Boxing Day, was, you know, I was into it. Obviously, I think that's just a tradition, right? It's like you get up and it was an early game, which is nice in our house, right? I know you're probably still sleeping though. You get that beauty sleep in all the time, not with me, but kids are up, we're watching it. And my little guy's hooked on it now because of Connor Bedard last year. Even now, like it's funny what one player can have an impact on a little guy playing hockey. And I think for Hockey Canada, it's hard. Like other countries are good too, right? Especially you get into a one-game showdown, you run into a hot goal, you get a couple bad bounces here or there. And I hope they don't dissect it too much, but I know they're going to.
They really didn't find their footing all tournament long. It was just really, really bizarre. But again, like we have an action-packed show for you today. Like, I don't know if you've caught this. The last like 4 days in Leafs Nation have just been insane. So a lot to cover. We'll go over the California road trip. We'll go over the Samsonov news first and foremost here. I will recap the weekend. Just lots going on, but I just wanted to make sure you had a good New Year, buddy.
Yeah, honestly, really good. We kept the kids out, like I said, till almost midnight, which was a huge mistake yesterday. It was hell in a cell with those little guys, just maniac. And I was nursing a good hangover. It's nice being able to go out New Year's. I don't honestly, other than last year, like for how many years, I don't even remember what I was doing on New Year's or when we had the party or what we did, because it was always based on your schedule, right?
Yeah, buddy, I did the full like throwback to mid-20s bottle service on New Year's Eve. Just what a crock, man. I woke up with a disgusting taste in my mouth, and it's probably because of the shit ton of vodka I drank, but just there's something about bottle service that just ain't right. Like I know I was tuned up, but like I vividly remember them taking away the first bottle before the second one, or before the you know, it was even done, and they brought the second bottle out, and next thing you know, you're out of the club. And on top of that, we were sort of misled. I won't mention where the place was in Toronto, but they told us it was sold out and it was going to be packed. And then we show up and it's like 65% full. So it was a bit disappointing, but nonetheless, good to have your loved ones, your buddies, your friends around for a good time. That's all that matters, right?
Yeah. I actually, I have some friends in Arizona. They sent a video wishing us Happy New Year's, thinking of bottle service. When I was in Arizona, we went out, we were at, I don't even know what place it was. We ended up.
That place is a light show. Oh my goodness.
Scottsdale? I want to say we were at Riot House or something right in that
Bottled Blonde.
Yeah, Bottled Blonde's right there. So we're at Riot House and my wife and my good buddy's friend had run a half marathon that day. And I was like, asked the bottle girl service if like, they have the marquee signs that come out when they bring the bottle.
Yeah.
And I was like, can I get one of those for like my wife and her friend? She's like, yeah, it's $1,200. And I was like, okay, no, we're good. Right. I'm not spending $1,200 on it. And then within like 5 minutes later, they had a bottle and the sign came out. Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz got it. It said hot dog fucks on it. And now I'm like, it's coming out and the sign, the girls have the sign. So they sent the video of it the other day. And I was dying laughing. And I was just telling them like, my wife, like fucks doesn't mean like, it means like, you're like, they like
He's
me.
a beauty. Yeah.
I'm a beauty kind of thing. We were just all dying as a sign came out for me. And we went out another night and they had another sign for me. So I was laughing because they liked the old guy being out in the club with them.
Man, I feel so old when they come, when they come out. So anybody listening and watching, when they come out and you get bottle service, like they have like the whole assortment of people who work there and they got bubbles and they're fucking, it's like a mini dance. And dude, it's so awkward. Maybe I wasn't drunk enough the other night, but I'm like, yeah, we're getting wasted and we're spending $700 on this fucking bottle. Like it's a different time.
yeah. It's such a ripoff, but they do a good job. And that was definitely the NHL life. I always used to laugh rookie party, like a lot of fun, but man, you think about the money that gets wasted, but it is part of the experience for sure. At least the rookies are paying for it.
Yeah, exactly that. And when you think about it, it is a giant ripoff. Like in what sick world does a bottle that you can buy for what, $30 now all of a sudden because of the service and somebody putting your ice cubes in your drink now costs like $400?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's fun. It is a funny experience for sure. And some I don't miss. That was never. And then my favorite part of it is we'd like go out as a team and you're like partying and you can't hear shit anyway. Like you're trying to have a good time. And you're like, you have your one ear covered.
Yeah.
Like, what? Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. That's deadly.
The bottle service girl tried to slip a fasty on me. She's like, oh, you want a bottle of champagne for like midnight? I was like, absolutely not. I think we're good. We're good at the two. Dude, it was like 3 of us, and we had 2 bottles. Like, we were big pimping on New Year's. I'm like, fuck, whatever. My buddy's like, I don't want to stand up. I was like, me either. So we're going to sit down. We're going to enjoy this, sip on our beverages. But, like, they don't give you time to breathe, man. Every 3 seconds, the girl's rolling by, filling my drink. I'd put my drink down. The asshole would take it. So, like, half the bottle was just, like, full drinks, but I'd put it down to have a conversation, and it's gone. Like, it killed me, man.
It's a fine-tuned science. They have it figured out, especially when you're going to those places too, right? Well, that's when you get the young crew through, right? That don't have a clue. And next thing you know, you get your bill and you're like, whoa, how did
We've
this
all
happen?
had that moment too. You get that very first bottle service bill. You're like, oh shit, I'm in one. And then on top of that, if you don't tip correctly, you're going to get in one really, really quickly too with the server.
Oh yeah. They're not shy. They know how to breed them, right? That's like part of the thing. And I always laugh because we were hanging out with some friends. We were talking about that when we were partying at one point, and we went bowling with our kids during the day. Again, this is how my life has changed full circle here. Now I'm like talking about my bowling day with my kids, and they had paid for everything, our friends. And I said, I was bugging my buddy. I'm like, well, it's because you owe me from all these times you've been out. And we were joking around about being out when I played in Nashville at a big party or something. And they're like, I'm just to order whatever you want, like fill your tables filled with drinks. You're like, well, who pays for it? And I'm like, I don't know. One of these rich guys is going to pick it up. Weber, Rene, somebody, not me. So who cares? Order what you want, right?
Oh, that's why they call it National League. It's so true. Like I've been part of those, obviously not as a player, just sneaking up, doing my thing, having a couple drinks and moving on. I know I'm not covering that bill whatsoever. I'm getting a lot of heat. Tammy said it was a rookie move, leaving my drink unattended. My apologies. You're probably right. But sometimes you got to put your drink down and have a conversation. Next thing you know, it's gone. But nevertheless, it was a good time. Happy New Year to everybody. Happy Blue Year. It's 2024, and hopefully things a bit different for the Maple Leafs this year. At the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube, where you can subscribe if you're watching right now at the Leafs Nation 401, and Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcasts. As we slide into the appetizer, brought to you by DoorDash. For a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off, up to $10 in value, and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app. Enter code NATION25. That's code NATION25 for 25% off your first order with DoorDash. Offer valid in Canada. Subject to change. Terms apply. Huts, I don't know what it is about working with you, but every time something big happens in the crease, it seems to be you filling in for Rosie. So without further ado, Samsonov waived on Sunday. What a ending to 2023 for this organization. Waived. He clears waivers. And the Hildebeest, Dennis Hildeby up. But firstly, your thoughts on Samsonov, his season so far?
I think long overdue. You know, it's been something I've taken some heat for it. I've been pretty I've stood my ground on how bad he's looked this year. Just, even when he was winning and, trying to get over that, it's tough, right? His game has just been off. He hasn't been crisp. He hasn't been able to find it. And in the NHL, it's hard, man. There's no time to catch up. Like, there's not like a break where you can just like reset yourself. And especially when, when Wall gets hurt, and it's hard, right? Because I think they've done a good job of giving him a chance to reset and have a little bit of a time. But it seems like it's just been that once that ball started rolling down that hill, it just picked up speed and it's gotten worse and worse. And we've touched on this every time I've been on here with you, is like, every time he has media availability, he just sounds so weak and so like his confidence is shot. And I don't know how you find that midseason. I've been through it, right? But I feel like when I struggled with it, it was like internalized. I would deal with it myself. It wasn't like public. I wouldn't like go to the mic and be like, oh, I'm shot. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I get my eyes checked. Like, what are you doing, man? Especially in that market, it's insane. So hopefully it's something that like, it will be good for him, because I'm sure he's a great guy. He's still young. He's still got a ton of potential. And like the great Mitch Korn always told me, you don't lose talent overnight, right? Like, he didn't lose his talent. It's just between his ears right now.
But what has transpired? Like, I don't know. And you could speak to it. You played in this league. Like, the position has become so volatile. Like, 1 year you can be incredible. The next year you can't stop a beach ball. Is it all about confidence with this guy?
It is. It's just such a mental position too. And I look at him and I think about like Allmark, kind of, he went through the same thing where it's like, he just didn't have that trust. The team didn't have trust in him, right? You see him leave Washington, he comes to Toronto, he's played well, and then he gets arbitration 1 year deal and 1 year deal. And it's always a battle to like get that contract, right? So I feel like then versus the same thing with like Jack Campbell, where it's like he was playing under so much pressure, right? He's wound so tight. Then he finally gets a big contract and it's just a shit show, because it's like you like decompressed, right? It's hard to stay. That's why I'm always so impressed by like guys like Marc-Andre Fleury, Hellebuck, these guys that can do it year in, year out. They're pretty consistent, right? So for him, it's just like the wheels fell off and it came off in a hard way, right? So it's tough. It's been tough to watch, right? Because you want the best for him, but you look at that game, it's just bad, man. I don't know how you reset it. Like, trust me, playing the American League ain't gonna be any easier playing like that. Like, the American League's not like everyone thinks like, oh, he's just gonna go there and rack up a bunch of shutouts. Like, trust me, if he's playing like that in the American League, he's gonna get lit up as well.
Man, the wording's concerning to me, where like he's going to go down and they're saying like he's not going to play right away. Like, he's going to utilize the practice time, a mental reset, like whatever you want to call it. But I'm just trying to figure out like what a fair expectation is at this point for Samsonov. Like, when do we see this guy? Do we see him again? Like, is it similar? Can you draw correlation to Jack Campbell with the Edmonton Oilers? Is it different because of the contract? Is it different because of the goaltender? I just wonder, from the Leafs perspective, what are they thinking? Like, is this a guy that you can count on later on this season to be a goalie for you again? Like, I just don't know if I can get to that point right now, because he's been that bad this year, and especially lately, right?
Yeah, it's tough to see what's going to happen, right? So I think in the interim, you're hoping Martin Jones can be that stopgap, right? And he can just, kind of hold them down. But my other concern that I don't know how much it gets talked on, obviously, is like Joseph Woll's ankle, right? This is a high ankle sprain. Like, I had 2 of them. I had one in college, and I came back from it that year, and it nagged me all year. Like, it was the worst. Nagged me for years. But I also wasn't getting the high-end treatment at that point and like going about things the right way. And then I had a high ankle sprain against the Rangers with the Sabres, which pretty much packed in my career. I had to get surgery on after I rehabbed it. So my concern is like, what does Joseph Woll look like when he's back as well, right? This is a legitimate concern that needs to be like talked about, because Martin Jones is serviceable, but I don't believe he's the guy that's going to win you a 7-game series and bring you to the promised line when you need him to steal games. And obviously Samsonov played well in stints last year, but so it's definitely going to be an interesting take here. And I don't know the Samsonov, like where he ends up on this, but he was good last year and he's played well, but like you pull up the numbers there and it's really tough to see it. Even at that 5-2-6 with those numbers is pretty impressive to show how good the Leafs are. Imagine they were getting good goaltending.
Oh, it's frightening. Honestly, you're right. And it would be a much different tune and story in this market had they been getting the net mining throughout the season. I think you make some valid points. Like, I think that was the important part to bring up about Martin Jones. Like, A, there's a reason why nobody wanted this guy. B, there's a reason why he started the year in the American Hockey League. Like, he's a good enough, serviceable third string guy at this point. Even with Seattle last year, the numbers were a bit deceiving. His save percentage was still pretty bad, but Seattle had a good year. He got a lot of victories. But again, there was a reason why teams didn't go after him the way they did in the offseason. Somebody's got to weather this storm. But I want to ask you, like, is there a goaltender out there? Because I think, understandable and good point on Woll. Like, just because if he comes back, it doesn't mean like no doubt. Like, I mean, it's going to work out, right? Is there a goaltender out there that you think could make sense for the Leafs to pick up, trade for, that could be sort of a longer term solution for them?
Obviously, like inside of the cap is tricky, right? Because you see some movement. Like obviously, I love Vamelka down in Arizona because he has term, right? And then the other guy that you think of that comes to mind for me is always Jake Allen, right? Because Montreal's been carrying 3 all year. But from Montreal's standpoint, I remember early in the year me being like, you can't go with 3. Why do you have 3? And then I think as I took a step back and you look at what Kent Hughes has done there, he is just holding his cards. And now that what Jake Allen used to be worth at the start of the season, I think as we creep closer, we talk about Carolina, we talk about Washington, Jersey needing goalies, or Jersey needs a guy bad right now with team that can win. How much value there now? Even Edmonton, you think about what they're going to want to try to give up to get a guy that can help complement Stuart Skinner. So it's tricky to see that. But those are 2 guys for me that like make sense, because it's not like you just want to go get another. You already have Martin Jones. You have a guy that's just a mid-range, going to give you good goaltending, but not a guy that can be better than that. So I think those are 2 guys that come to mind for me that could really make a difference for this team.
Well, that's a thing too. And again, I'm careful using the example of Vegas last year because not many teams have that blue line. They don't have Pietrangelo. They don't have Theodore. But you win a Stanley Cup with Shea Theodore, and I wonder, it's a copycat league. I don't even wonder. It is. If teams look at that and say, you know what, we're not going to pay up to get a John Gibson who has term with the Anaheim Ducks. We're going to get a guy like, and I'm not trying to, not give the props to like a Jake Allen. I think he's a good goaltender, but I think a move of that stature makes a bit more sense than trying to go big game hunting, especially now with the salary cap too.
I agree. I think it's just one of those things. And goaltending, we all know now, it's not necessarily like having the big dog. It's like who can get hot at the right time or just have enough cards in your deck that you can throw somebody in that's going to work, right? Well, again, you go back to Vegas, like granted, again, the back end, but like we've seen it in years past, right? Binnington gets hot at the right time. You have like guys outside of your like, for years it was Tuukka Rask. You knew what you're getting every year. Vasilevsky and these guys were like high end guys. Other than that, the rest of the goalies are all interchangeable. That's how I always felt. I was like, I was a solid NHLer, but I was like, I wasn't a stud by any means. I was just like, if I was hot, I was going, right? I was dialed in. But then like somebody else could be going. Where these big money guys, it's hard to get that done, especially when the Leafs back end looks like how it looks right now.
Yeah, and again, unfortunately, around the league, it's happening everywhere, not just in Toronto. Like, you even look at Minnesota. Philip Gustafson got banged up over the weekend. He's going to be out a couple weeks, they're saying. So Marc-Andre Fleury suddenly maybe not an option trade-wise. I don't even know if he is because you need 2 netminders, especially in this day and age, the NHL. Jason writing in, Jones is better than Allen. I couldn't disagree more. I think Allen's a really good goaltender. I think he's further along. And I think Martin Jones is victim of the Toronto bubble where he has one game and it's like, this guy's a Vezina winner. I think he is what he is. I think you perfectly put it. If you have this expectation that Martin Jones is going to play the next 15 games at a save percentage of .930, you're crazy. Like, it's going to be .910, .905. He's going to win some games. He's going to have some bomb games too.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Martin Jones is not better than Jake Allen, in my opinion. Like, Martin Jones is a good goalie, don't get me wrong, and I think that. But you look at it, Jake's body of work over his career and the way he like manages the crease, I think there's more sustainability in his game. But again, like having another guy that can play like Hildeby, obviously it's great. This young kid's getting a good exposure, but like, man, you're asking a lot of a kid to go into this situation that has no experience, that has no, pro pedigree yet. And you don't want to like ruin his future as well, right? Because you see that happen a lot where guys get rushed into situations, and the next thing you know, he's the next Samsonov because he's got mental health issues because he's been struggling and dealing with this market and what comes with being a Maple Leaf.
What is it with like prospect netminders in Toronto getting nicknames before they play a game? Like, and I understand Hildebeest. I mean, that has to stick with the guy for years because he's 6'7", but like right away, it's like getting so loud in Toronto over a 22-year-old who's played like 15, 17 total games in the AHL. Is that a pretty good year? You talked about the AHL not being an easy league to play in. 7-5-3 at 2.20, 919, 2 shutouts for Dennis Hildeby. I think understandably so. They're being very coy. He's been recalled, but they're saying, yeah, we might start Martin Jones in the back-to-back. No, you're not. Hildeby's making his debut, at least in my opinion, this week. But I think it's important that you brought that up because the last thing you want to do, and that's why I think they've been hesitant for like a month now to make a call, to make a change, because we all knew the writing was on the wall with Samsonov. Like, they didn't want to do this, man. Like, I think that's the big thing here is like, you don't want to hurt what's going on with the kid right now.
No, that's the other thing too. You're trying to protect him, right? I feel like there was times where I remember you'd be like, I was in the minors and I was working my way in and I knew I was better than the guy up top, or like I was playing better, and you're like, they're struggling and you're like, oh, you want to go, you want to go. And it was always like, you got to just wait, right? They're just trying to be smart with it. And then you look at the way they handled Joseph Wall and how he turned out this year, how great he was playing, but they also managed him perfect, right? They kept him in the minors. They kept him, protect him. Then like, I'm sure there were stints in the minors where Joseph Wall was shit too, right? But he's doing it on his terms, not in the big spotlight, where you learn to deal with that. You learn to like overcome those situations. Then now you got thicker skin. Now you know how to manage. Hey, okay, I'm struggling. This is the process. This is what's worked for me. You kind of have that repertoire in your toolbox, where sometimes when these guys get rushed in, it's tough, right? Like I even think back, remember when Garrett Sparks came in and he got a shutout right away. He was like, oh, this is the next coming. He's going to be the best, right? Like it's easy to play on emotion. I always talk about is you get up there, like I'm sure Hildeby's going to go in and play well, but like, what is sustainable? Tell me what's sustainable. Like James Reimer, like that's sustainability. These guys that last like over time, not being amazing, not overly talented, overly skilled, but just have like durability, and it comes between the years.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I'm going to temper expectations right away with Hildeby. And again, they haven't give a conclusion one way or another. I would think it's likely, at least my speculation, that Hildeby gets in against the Anaheim Ducks in the back-to-back. It makes a lot of sense, but I think obviously they're going to protect him as best they can. But in this day and age, it's tough for a guy to play on a back-to-back. I think it's so fascinating that's got to a level, and now they're calling the Hildeby up and he's with the team. But it just maybe shows you the feel of like Samsonov right now is way off, where they felt desperation to make this type of move, right?
Yeah, well, I think it like instills across the whole team too. You don't think when this guy's in net and he's like in Buffalo, when he gives up that first one to Greenway, like that stinker, like the bench is just like, oh no, here we go again. Right now, it's hard to play when you're worried about every shot going in on your goalie, right? Like there's you need to be able to play free and play the right way. And the team lacks confidence, right? It's not a good thing. And even the crowd, I think no one was hiding from it. And the thing is, Samsonov is even questioning himself, right? Like the room for error is so small in the NHL or any position when they're playing like at that level, yet alone goalie, right? When you're off just a touch, you're losing games. That's just the number one rule. And for him, it's obviously been magnified, and it's tough to watch because I feel for him. I've been in that situation before, not to that extent where I got sent down because I was horrible. But in the same thing, like when you're fighting it, man, it's a tough place to be.
The sickening thing, though, is that the Marners, the Matthews, the Nylanders, the Tavares of the world are being rolled out there, and you can't say anything. Like we all know the goaltending's been shit.
Yeah.
Like you're the microscope's on you, and they're like, yeah, we have the most confidence in this guy. Like anybody who's played sports, you have zero confidence in the guy. You can't say it publicly, but you feel like trash going out there to play for this guy, right?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because it's one of those ones where it's like I've seen guys call out goalies in the room before where it'd just be like you gave up a shitter, or like you're just play like wake up, man. Like, well, we need a save there. But like it's honestly so far past that that it's like the elephant in the room. It's like everybody knows what's going on. Like you're like eating breakfast with them on the morning of a game, and you're like, hey, man, how was your night? You're like, oh, fuck. Like, what do I say to this guy? Like he's literally in a world of hurt, and everywhere you turn, you're talking about it. So it's something that isn't hidden. It's inside the team, and it's it's tough, right? And I feel for those guys. Like, granted, they get rolled out all the time. It's better than rolling Samsonov out to talk, because you know how that's
true. Yeah, it's been a disaster. Again, it's like a formality in Leafs Nation. Early January, you're talking about goaltending. They could have fucking Dominic Hasek. It would be the same. I don't know what it is with this market. We do know what it is with this market, but every year it's the same conversation. It's sickening to talk about, but nevertheless, we do that on this podcast. This segment is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. Get custom ring building delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece Program and an unbeatable pricing policy. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. So just to recap what we missed over the weekend, the final 2 games of 2023, as we referenced on Friday, this team does not beat inferior opponents. I couldn't believe social media all on Samsonov. I get it. He was trash in that game. But at some point, there's got to be accountability thrown around the room. Last time I checked, a goalie's part of a team. But obviously, that's the big story. And, the Leafs lose to Columbus again. Just the bottom feeder teams. Like, that's such a conversation to begin with. I know the goaltending was bad in that game. You got to find a way to win.
Yeah, you have to find a way to win these games, especially you want to be an elite team, right? We talk about trying to win a Stanley Cup, and it's rough, right? Especially, but again, you talk about the confidence. Like, I feel like this was like we have to play him one more time, and then it's over, right? It's like put him in there, and then we get rid of it if we lose. Like if he plays well there, obviously it's a whole different story, but it's tough. You need to find a way to rally and be a team that can grind it out, right? Then just give up no chances. Just shut down, play shutdown D, do what you have to do. And obviously it's tough to watch, right? Especially when you're losing to Columbus. And that it's been a rough goal. It's, you talk about it before, like it seems like they're always playing Columbus and it's always these hilarious games. And like take the over at like over 10 when you're playing Columbus.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's exactly. It was such a weird season series, but again, maybe you're the wrong guy to ask because you're a goalie, but like I was a bit perplexed because I put out a tweet and I got some fire back, but a lot of people agreed. I said, "Is this it for Samsonov and Keefe?" Well, the writing was on the wall for Samsonov. We all knew that was it, but I think it's gonna gradually start to get louder for Sheldon Keefe. I just at some point in time, like the easy scapegoat is the head coach. Like I've been on the record and saying I think Sheldon Keefe is an incredible coach. I think he's a really good coach, but I just wonder if a fresh voice could be good for this team because it's clearly. And again, a lot of people came back at me and said, "Hey, this is their record since mid-November, and they've been a good team and points wise and all that." I just, I poll you right now. Sheldon Keefe's the coach of this team for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. How confident are you they can go far in the postseason? Is my question.
Not far at all.
Yeah.
I think I go back to that game against Carolina. Like watching Carolina play, it was like the Leafs couldn't do anything. Like there was no time, no space, just big bodies, sticks, like just there was no presence in the whole game. Like it just felt like, I don't know if you felt that way. Like I felt like watching it on TV, it was like boys playing against men, where Carolina were just like seemed humongous and there's no space in the offensive zone. They couldn't do anything. And where I watched that, it's like, I know Carolina's had their struggles this year, but like there is a team where it's like, how the hell are you going to beat them in a 7-game series when they're just shutting you down every which way you turn? You can play your run and gun, you can do all your dipsy doodling, but like against a team like that, and there are going to be other teams that can do the same thing, that have high-powered offenses, that play structured like the Bruins, right, who play the structure and they can score. How the heck are you going to get through those guys? And when you watch it Saturday night, it just felt like it was like watching paint dry. It was just like there's nothing. They don't give you anything. It's boring. They get the puck out, and that's it. There's no time, no space.
It was a professional performance. Number one, we all knew it was coming. Michael Bunting, video tribute, scores a goal. Like, that's a given. Anybody who plays the Leafs, they're going to score against him. He's got his Scarborough family in town for that. Like, it's sickening. It really is. And then number two, like, did I miss anything here? And maybe it just reinforces the fact that Sheldon Keefe has no pull on this team, that David Kampf is the guy that he's going to use as an example to say, hey, we need to be better after losing to Columbus. Like, and I think the cherry on top to that was that Carolina comes out and scores 2 power play goals with David Kampf, the best penalty killer on this team, in the press box eating popcorn. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's not the statement. Like, it's kind of like he's a guy that can come in and out of the lineup.
Guys care? Does anybody in the fucking room care that David Kampf was scratched? Please.
Yeah, like, I mean, you really want to send a message, it's got to be one of the big dogs, right? Like, it's got to be someone that has an impact that's going to be like, holy cow, this is for real. Things are changing here. Because what has really changed, right? Other than you got a new GM that I think the best thing he ever did was make sure Samsonov only got a 1-year deal, right? Didn't give him term. Right now, he looks really smart on that deal. But it is what it is. Like, it's not going to change when the boys just they run it, right? The big four run it, and that's the way it is. And it's always been that way. And it doesn't seem like it's heading in any different direction, especially when you watch them play against a team that knows how to defend their end. And man, was that tough to watch.
It was. And again, to your point, Carolina showed up. They took care of business. I think the Leafs were that bad. I thought Kochetkov had some brilliant moments in that game. I sort of laughed about accountability. So it's like, okay, David Kampf had a bad play and some tough moments in that game against Columbus, and you're going to single him out and say, okay, this guy's eating it. Well, where are you when Marner's giving away the puck in the D zone and, the tough giveaway in the empty netter in that Carolina game? Like, if you want to play that game, then it can get serious in a hurry. That's why I really, really was questioning the decision to begin with. Like, did that just show Sheldon Keefe's hand that he can't make that big decision to really bench a Marner, put him on the fourth line for a couple of shifts. And this is where he's got to go. David Kampf is the guy he's ruling out and using it as an example. I thought it was mystifying.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. And it is funny that they go and score 2 power play goals right after that, right? So,
Yeah.
but where is that? I don't know. I just feel like there's the accountability is like, hey, well, you guys get points, so it doesn't matter what else you do anywhere else, right? That's what it feels like because you guys are the stars. But again, you just go back to like doing leafy things, right? Like Rosie said, like it's one of those things. It's like I almost feel like it's just going to be the exact same thing we watched last year.
Me too.
And the year before, it's like, oh shit, we had a good regular season. We got in, we're good, and then we get punted.
Yeah. No, that's my feel too, and that's why I started to wonder, like, what's the thing you can do? You can't fire an entire team. What's the one thing they can do right now that could maybe change the course of this organization? It's the head coach. And how many times in recent memory, it's a recency game where a new coach comes in, they get that bump, and they go on a bit of a run. And, everything's rosy. And I think on top of that, there's some options out there that make sense. Like, I'm not just endorsing this saying, hey, let's make a coaching change for the sake of making a coaching change. There's some pretty legitimate names out there who I think could be well suited to manage this market and bring this team to that next level. Would you agree?
I agree. And some guys like that would come in hot, right? Like not like gonna baby guys. And I know Dubas when he got Keefe, and he was big on relationships and like fostering. And I know it's a new wave of person and younger generation needs a little more TLC, where back in the day it was just tough love, where maybe that's what they need right now. Maybe it's a short-term thing. Maybe you bring in a guy like, Craig Berube, or like someone who has like that pedigree and like presence that's really just going to rip into these guys and not baby them. And like, maybe that's what they need, right? Like I always used to joke around, like, when people were like babied me, I didn't get well. I needed like tough love. I needed like, and then even if I didn't like it, I would like use it to my advantage. Be like, okay, well, fuck you, man. I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to prove you wrong. Right. And like, maybe that guy was trying to do it, or he wasn't trying to do it. That's the way I did it. And then later in my career, if like things were going good, I would always find ways to stay motivated. And it's tough to get motivated when you're making 10 sheets a year and you're running the whole city.
Well, no, you're right. That's exactly it too. And I think the prime example is in Edmonton, like Jay Woodcroft. I mean, you can draw similarities to Sheldon Keefe, like a phenomenal regular season record. He's been further than Keefe in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, you can draw parallels. So like, I understand this whole ideology where it's like Keefe, he's been incredible. And how can you fire a coach that continues to put up 110-point seasons? But like in the playoffs, I mean, the proof is in the pudding with the personnel on that roster. And, to a point, like Mike Babcock was right with some of these players and teaching them. I don't know. I just have felt this way for a while, where it's like there's no obligation from the current GM. It's not his guy. Like, to make a decision right now like that, you're in a playoff spot. I think that's the bump this team could use in the second half of the season to go on a crazy run here. I don't know why I feel that way, but you have that sense covering this team on a daily basis. They're in need of something, man. Like, something isn't right with this team this year. Maybe people will disagree with me, but it just got a weird feel to this team. And I couldn't agree more. Like, I think it gets right now as things lay, same thing happens in the postseason. You get that eerie feel. They can't put it together. And I think right now they're able to sort of restructure, their strategy and how they look come the postseason a bit.
Yeah, it's still early enough, right? And because you don't want to wait too long, right? Because it's one of those things that's gonna be hard to like get new systems or the way they want to play implemented. And it's not going against your cap. They got enough money to pay out his contract. They'll be all right. They'll survive, right? It's one of those things. I just think, like, because he just got that extension, does that change the standpoint? But for me, I agree. What you hit on there is like, it's not his coach, right? Like, Trev comes in there and you got to get something that's going to work. And I think if you look at years past, you're getting to the point of like insanity, where it's like, it's literally the exact same package we watched last year, the year before, with like subtle changes, right? Mm-hmm. But like bringing in, Bertuzzi, was he really going to be the big difference maker, or Domi? Right?
But those are playoff guys, though. Like,
they are playoff guys. I like that, but it's one of those things where it's like, but your big guys are still your big guys. Your back end is still questionable. Your goal, like, now the goaltending's a mess. Like, I don't know. It's a lot of moving parts, and it doesn't seem like, even when they are healthy and they had everything rolling, like, if Joseph Wall wasn't playing out of his mind at one point, they were going to be losing a lot more hockey games. Like, imagine Samsonov was playing down that stretch. I don't know. It's nuts. It's time for something.
There's just, again, to your point, there's just so many moving parts. I just think this team is in need of a boost. I don't know if it's going to come trade-wise. Like, I know they're in a playoff spot. I know they're a couple points back still of the likes of the better teams in this division and conference, but something ain't right. And the fact that we cover this team on a daily basis and we're seeing that, we can't be the only ones, that for sure. And chime in with your thoughts as well in the chat. You guys have been fantastic as per usual at the Leafs Nation 401, where you can subscribe, leave us a review and all that. But Wendy's is letting you win real food with your fantasy teams this year and daily face-off as well. For those of you who smoke the competition, Wendy's is rewarding you with weekly prizes that will have you winning despite your lack of team building skills. Download the Wendy's app and score yourself 150 bonus reward points on your first order and grab a sweet victory from the mouth-watering jaws of defeat along with some fresh, never frozen beef. Sign up to play Daily Face-Off Survivor to win weekly prizes like the spicy chicken sandwich from Wendy's and the Wendy's app. So it's the Leafs and the Los Angeles Kings, the first of 3 in this California road trip. And it has that feel of a massive game for the Leafs, considering the weekend they just had, losing to Columbus, professional win by the Carolina Hurricanes on Saturday, bunting returns. The Leafs need this in a big way, but unfortunately, the LA Kings have been fantastic this year, and it's a tough matchup for the Leafs in this one.
Yeah, it is. And this is going to go back to what we just talked about. We talked about that professional win against Carolina. The Kings do a really good job in their own end. They don't give up a lot. I've talked a lot on this on other shows and stuff about Cam Talbot. Like, he has just been efficient and great. Like, he's not reinventing the wheel, right? I always touch on guys like you talk about Martin Jones, you talk about James Reimer, these guys that have been around a long time and they're not like stars. They're just solid goaltending. Nothing really changed with Cam Talbot. He's part of a good system now. He's part of a predictable hockey system. He's part of a system where when he steps out on the ice, no matter who they're playing, we are playing the way we need to play. We're going to dictate the defensive zone. When we get the offense, we generate from there. Where when I watch Toronto and I watch some of these other teams that struggle in their own end, it's like you can't be making like, how many times you watch guys make cute plays in the D zone and turn it over?
Too many.
It's so frustrating, right? Where it's like, play with structure. When you get in the offensive zone, the leash is off. You have to play, right? But if you want to win and be consistent and predictable, it starts in the D zone. And that's where Todd McLennan has these guys playing the right way.
Show me a good goalie, show me a good system. And that's perfectly put, because again, you look at LA, you look at Cam Talbot where he was a year ago. Now, granted, probably healthy, wasn't your year ago with the Ottawa Senators, but it just shows you, like, you could have anybody in there. If you have a good system, like David Riddick, man, remember him, had a cup of tea with the Leafs? Like, Big Save Dave was his nickname 10 years ago. He can't stop a beach ball now, but he even looks like a stud in this system in LA.
Yeah, it is a product of that. And I've been part of it too. Like when we were in St. Louis, I've touched on that before. We were so predictable, right? Like, and that's the biggest thing. When you were in net and you know what's coming. I remember going from that system to Buffalo where it was just a free for all, right? Where it'd be like, there was nights where I thought like, I didn't think I knew that I played well, and you still give up 3, you give up 4. Cause it's like, there's no sustainability in that, right? Like they need that's where you touch back to the way they play. It's so frustrating to me because it's like, this is not the thing. Then you go back to the coach. It seems like I feel like I'm taking crazy pills right now because we're just doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Yeah. When you go and look at these other teams and you're like, you have Cam Talbot, who's been lights out, right? And against the Leafs, he's been unbelievable too, right? In 11 games, he's 6-2-1, which is nuts, right? 9-16. That's Cam Talbot. We're not talking about Andre Vasilevsky. We're not talking about an absolute star. Just Cam Talbot, who's like a starter, backup, 1A, 1B. Great career. Like, and I love Cam Talbot. I played against him my whole career. But give me a good system, you're going to get consistency.
It really is the definition of insanity. I know like that phrase is overused in this market, but it is. Like somebody in the chat made a good point earlier on. Vegas like had 3 coaches in like 6 years and they won a Stanley Cup, right? I think this reluctancy to move on from Sheldon Keefe is a bit weird and crazy. And granted, it's been a small sample size here with Brad Treliving. And I think certainly at the very least, it's going to be a conversation that's had postseason considering how they do in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but you got to get there. And I just think there's so many moving parts with this team right now. 1-4-1 in the last 6 games. They've alternated wins, by the way, in the last 4 with the LA Kings. Ryan Reeves, by the way, sounds like he's good to go. Would you put him right back in there against a team like LA, or would you wait, like do it the way they were when he got injured?
I think you got to get him in. You got to get him going, right? Like that's the whole point of having him. Like if you're not going to
can he get going?
Yeah, that is a good point, right? To his level. Like I love Revo, a good friend, and like teammate, but it's just the game is so damn fast now, and he's just not as agile as he was or never was in that sense. But he can bang, he can keep guys honest, he can do that. But I just don't know where this team goes from here. Like, and I know he's been a liability when he has been on, but fuck, a lot of times I watch Mitch Marner's a liability too, right? So it's like one of those things where do we get this team in the direction if it's not implemented across the board, where you're getting guys to play the right way in all three zones?
Well, that's a thing that they just opened a new can of worms with this David Camp scratching. Like, it was, for a lack of a better, like, it was just head scratching. It was head scratching why that was the decision they made when everybody saw and they're like, yeah, Samsonov sucked. Like, yeah, he was the big reason, but I maybe saw it the way Sheldon Keefe saw, where it's like, yeah, Samsonov sucked, but the giveaways, the turnovers, the D-zone mistakes were through the roof. Like, people sort of missed that on Friday because Samsonov's such a polarizing story.
Yeah.
And the one thing we love doing in this market is ripping on goaltenders. So I felt like the Leafs sort of got a pass on Friday because their goaltending was so shit, where it's like, no, they're making the same mistakes game in and game out. Like, we just talked about LA and how structured that team is defensively. It's your guess is as good as mine as which Leafs team is going to show up defensively. If there's no structure, they remind me a lot of the Ottawa Senators, by the way. DJ Smith got whacked like 2 weeks ago, where it's like it's like beer league hockey out there. And just the D-zone mistakes and the plays, I think, were compounded, obviously, by a bad goalie on Friday.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. Even good or bad goaltending there, you're not really going to get the results you want. And even if you do, it wasn't the right type of hockey to be winning hockey consistently. And they need to address it at some point, because I feel like this is getting later and later and later. And then it's like, oh, it's just another season. We'll get them next year. Yeah. Right? Like, it feels like it's getting to that point already, and it's only early January.
And they're in a window, though, right? And that's the thing you can't lose sight of in this market. Yeah, it's an embarrassment of riches. I mean, to the theme of the entire show, I mean, it's quite clear that nobody wants to make that big move where it's the core four. So you got to look around, and who's going to be the scapegoat? It's probably going to be the head coach. Like, they're at some point in time, if they continue along this route where it's like unpredictable and they just don't know when they're going to show up, the coach is going to take the fall. It is what it is in pro sports. And sadly, it's just a reminder of how much of a business it is. But like, it just like it really is a definition of insanity, and somebody's got to do something and pick it up. And again, it gets back to the point about accountability too. It's like, yeah, blame David Camp, but like, if you're going to do that, start playing that game, then you got to, the blame's got to go somewhere else when you make mistakes too.
Yeah, for sure. It's got to go. And it starts here. He's your head coach, right? He is the guy that lets us line up out all the time. And I think for me, it's like the inconsistency of, like, you see the one game they're good, the next game they're bad. Doesn't seem to be any like thing for them to fall back on. And I've always been a big believer in, like, you can always fall back on structure. You can't fall back on skill work and goal scoring, because goal scoring and stuff is like such a fine line, right? Like, you could go out and be amazing and score, but like, just you're off a little bit, it doesn't work. But like, structure is structure, right? If you know where to go and there's predictability, where like I'm protecting you in the zone, it gives you a chance to play good hockey if you don't have it, because then at least you can hang around in a game and maybe get a power play and maybe win a game. But if you're just trying to play running on offense, if you're off the slightest, it turns into a shit show, and you see the outcome all the time when that happens.
So they need a big effort tonight. The Betano wrap-up is presented by Betano.ca. The game starts now, 19+. Please play responsibly. Martin Jones, maybe they get a boost because he's playing the LA Kings, and of course was a draft pick of the LA Kings, was Quickie's backup for a while there, goes to San Jose by route of Boston. So like, there's that revenge narrative if you want to play that, but they need a big boy effort. I don't know how you feel about this game. I've really noticed, and I brought this up earlier this year, whenever these two teams play, it's weird, man. It's always like a puck line victory. It's a monster blowout victory. So if you recall earlier this year, LA goes into Toronto. It was on Halloween, and it felt like Halloween. A 4-1 win where the Leafs were booed off the ice after the second period. Hopefully they have long memories. I'm forecasting a monster Leafs victory tonight. I just got that feel today. How about you?
No, I don't mind it. I think as a goalie, going into the way LA plays right now, I think Jones is going to get a lot of shots and get a lot of work, and he's going to find a rhythm. I think will be good for him, because it's not like they're like crazy dynamic in the sense of what they're going to be giving up. And I don't mind your take. I don't know about a huge win, but maybe this is going to be I just think the guys are going to come up flying, especially after Samsonov just got waived. Like, it's going to be sending a message. I think it sets up well with the back-to-back in Anaheim too. Like, do we give Hildeby his first start because it's in Anaheim and guys are going to protect him. And then you got 2 starts against San Jose where these are games you need to win, right? Like you got to get points against these bottom feeder teams.
How would you look at it from the Leafs perspective? So, like, obviously you want to win every game. It's just a reality. You're not going to. 3 of the next 4 inferior opponents. You got 2 against San Jose, 1 against Anaheim. Here's your playoff team. Here's your bona fide cup contender tonight. Like, they have to win 3 of these 4 at the very least, no?
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're trying to keep pace and try to get home ice, and you have to beat these teams, like, no offense, those teams, like, they're bad. And, you know, they've showed some bright spots this year, but if you're a legitimate team, you need to find a way to just snuff out these wins and get it on the road and enjoy the road trip at the same time, like find a way to man up and get these wins.
Producer Vic as well writing in, Trevor Moore, anytime goal. Moore's been a revelation this year. He's been incredible as a member of the LA Kings. Of course, I believe was part of the Muzzin deal a couple years back. He's been good. So if you want to look at the anytime goal there, just similar to what we smashed Michael Bunting over the weekend, scores that goal. It was a given. It was like 5 minutes in. Just take your goal and move on. But I just want to see a big effort from the Leafs tonight. It has that feel around this ominous feel around the team. Maybe it's just me, Huts, where it's like, I think we're at a point every waking loss, you start to wonder if like big things are cooking. I don't know why I got that feel, but I got to be in these things sometimes.
I like it. I love your like take on the coach too. I think it's great. I just think a shakeup is something that's needed. It's a fresh face. It can do a lot. It could be just that shot in the arm they need to really push them over the top.
By the way, a lot of people in the chat saying Guy Boucher. If you're making a change, like, please, it's not going to be Guy Boucher, right? Like, I think it's the same shit if it's Guy Boucher. Like, you need somebody fresh, a new voice, somebody who's done it in recent memory. There are names out there, as we've mentioned. I just don't think it would be the right call. Like, I think Keefe's a good coach. And again, I think he can still save himself, but they got to get going with structure. Like, the fact that we're now into January, they've won 10 times in regulation in 34 games. I think the numbers, once you start reading more directly into them, you're like, wow, this team doesn't have it. So looking forward to this one, Huts. It's always great to connect with you, buddy. And you're going to be with us quite a bit over the next couple of weeks, or in a couple of weeks, I think, too, no?
Yeah, a few more times. And honestly, it's been great. I love it. I love getting on here and chatting and staying sharp and using my insight of all of the bad goals I gave up and seeing how they did it.
No, it's good. It's always great to have that perspective. I mean, you played in this league. You're a goalie in this league. I mean, who better than to give some advice and some intel as to what's transpiring behind the scenes? And certainly something we're monitoring, obviously, is Ilya Samsonov. Those updates are going to come every time this guy plays in the AHL, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
We saw it in Edmonton like two weeks ago or whatever. Like, oh, he had 2 good starts in a row. Let's call him up. It's going to be the same shit in Toronto, man.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I remember, I think you tweeted the one thing, how it's going in the AHL, and Jack Campbell gave up that stinker when he's just sitting on the post. It just like rolls in over his skate. And I feel for him, man. It's one of those things it doesn't, at least he's making a ton of money doing it. But
yeah, that's exactly it. He's probably paying for a lot of meals and, could only wonder in the Calder Cup final this year, it's Jack Campbell and Bakersfield against Ilya Samsonov for the Toronto Marlies. We're at that path
awesome.
now.
That would be awesome. That would be way too funny. But yeah, I hope he does well and he gets a chance, right? Because I just hate seeing guys struggle, right? But at the same time, opportunities come in weird ways. Someone might take the ball and run with it here.
Very well said. Thank you to everybody in the chat at the Leafs Nation 401, where you could subscribe on YouTube. Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Many thanks to Gavin for stepping up as producer today. Producer Vic aboard as well. That's Carter Hutton. I'm Nick Alberga. Jay Roseau back in the mix tomorrow. And we'll talk to recap this one and set up potentially Dennis Hildeby's NHL debut here against the Anaheim Ducks. So we'll talk on Wednesday. Take care.
Thank you for watching Leafs Morning Take. Hit that subscribe button and never miss a show. And for more, visit theleafsnation.com. TheLeafsNation.com. If you don't know how to spell the Leafs Nation, you know what I mean? But hey, sometimes you never know.